So welcome everyone to today's session where we're going to be talking about supporting your employees manage distractions while working from home. Really appreciate you all taking the time out to join the session. I know it was a late noticed one in terms of when we promoted it, but if you're watching this on the replay or you're maybe listening to this on the podcast, hopefully you're going to get some insights and valuable advice in today's session. So before we start, just to kind of look at what we're going to be going through over the next sort of half an hour, 40 minutes. When it comes to the EveryMind app, we've seen recent insight from our employees, from users that are using the app that showed the biggest challenge that they've faced right now was struggling to switch off and manage distractions. So really, we wanted to talk more about that in today's session of how we can encourage employees to switch off, how we can encourage employees to manage distractions. And it might be something that you can take away too for your own productivity as well. So who are we? Zoe, do you want to bring yourself in here? I feel it's bad. It's been 1 minute already and I haven't even brought you in. So Zoe, just share a little bit about yourself.
Hi guys, I'm Zoe Parker. I'm the head of HR at EveryMind at Work, and it's been about 6 months now that we've been on this this journey, and since launch and everything. So yeah, it's been a while since we've done one of these now. So back in the swing of it again, and hopefully we'll get some good discussions going today. So yeah, good afternoon to you all.
Oh yeah, God, it feels like the morning though when you said good.
It's afternoon now, isn't it?
I know it's the days go so quick. And then I'm Paul, the founder of everymindatwork.com, and how do I else introduce myself? I'm a campaigner. I'm very passionate about mental health and trying to help people that are struggling with their mental health, which is why I started EveryMind at Work as well. And hopefully, obviously, some of the insight that we can share in today's session is going to be valuable for you as well. So that was a really bad introduction from me and you. We've done this too many times now. Just like we won't introduce ourselves.
No.
But hopefully we'll share some personal experiences during this session.
Yeah.
So guys, before we do move on, because there's people now joining, can we just get a yes in the chat box if the audio levels are fine? Just give me a yes in the chat box if everything is all good. Before we move on, thank you, Sophie, Emma. Thank you, another Emma. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Vicky. Lisa, good stuff. Okay, thank you all for joining as well. So, working from home, I thought we'd start here, Zoe. Advantages of working from home. I know that you went back to the office recently and then you're coming back home.
Yeah.
And, what would you say the advantages, firstly, of working from home are?
So I think the main advantages for me personally, I guess, are the flexibility side of it. You take that commute out of the equation. I mean, in previous roles, I had some hellish commutes that would literally add hours and hours onto my day. So for me, not having that commute and just having the flexibility of being able to structure your day, perhaps a bit differently. If you are sort of an early riser, you could maybe, I don't know, get in a bit of exercise, and equally at the end of the day as well. So I love the fact that I'm not, getting up at the crack of dawn and then possibly working, relatively late and then getting home even later because I've got an hour commute. So that's probably one of the biggest advantages for me, plus the whole flexibility side of it, that if you do need to, I don't know, be there for, I don't know, a dental appointment or whatever, it allows you to manage your work-life balance better, I think, in general. I'm not suggesting that, we should slope off and be doing, reams and reams of other stuff. But I think if you did need to do something else, you've got that flexibility to have a bit more of a balance in your life rather than dashing out every morning and coming home late, definitely. Yeah, that's a biggie for me.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Guys, put in the chat box, what's your advantages of working from home as well? What have you benefited from since obviously working from home? But I would just echo what you've just said, Zoe, is that extra time. I was to get into the office in London at 9, I would have to leave mine for about 7:30. So, there was little time to exercise. There was little time to really see, my kids. And at some points I was also coming back when, my youngest was in bed. So, that's been a big benefit for me to see more of them. But then when we're talking about disadvantages, I'm also going to say how them walking in as you're in the middle of work is also very difficult and a distraction. We've got a couple coming in here now. We've got no motorway driving. Nice. Cooking
Yeah,
my
I
own
agree with
lunch. No
that.
more expensive sandwiches. Sophie, I would agree with that as well. The amount of money I've saved on coffee and food,
Coffee.
not
Mm,
working in London. Focus time and being closer to my family and my pet cat.
yeah.
Lack of commute and traffic, less travel, extra time to get things completed,
Mm.
flexibility, having extra time to do a newfound passion, which is cold water swimming. Really
Oh,
nice, Lisa. And the flexibility around the children has been a huge plus as well. So
yeah.
lots of advantages actually of working from home, and I think people are really embracing it. But let's talk about the disadvantages. Zoe, do you want to start?
Yeah, for me, it's the whole connectivity piece. I think I'm a real people person, and as you know, Paul, I've been working with with another client as well, and I think joining a new business in lockdown is not conducive to making those connections and really getting to know people. And I ask loads of questions, and if I'm in the office, it's easy for me to just grab somebody for 2 seconds and say, what about this, or can you help me with that? And I think it's not necessarily a feeling of isolation because you've still got the connectivity over Zoom or whatever, but for me, I almost feel as though I'm pestering people more if I'm at home. So whereas in the office, I can maybe just literally hover at the side of their desk or whatever or have a conversation. Whereas now you'd either have to send an email or pick up the phone, and I feel as though I think I probably don't have as much of that communication anywhere near as much because I'm thinking I don't want to bother somebody, or I think, oh, it's not that important. I'll maybe check that tomorrow. So for somebody trying to, be inducted into a new business and get up to speed with everything, get to know everyone, I've found it quite difficult. And so that's probably been the biggest disadvantage for me, and it's also I think tied into that getting to know people. It's harder to gauge body language over. I mean, I know I'm probably blurry now. My internet upload speed is awful, but I think it's picking up on those behavioral cues and body language and all of that. It's just much more difficult, I think, trying to do it over, over a video call. And you can't, for some things you can't be sort of face-to-face contact, can you? So I think that's the biggest disadvantage for me. I mean,
Yeah.
I suppose I'm lucky in the sense that I don't have a whole host of other distractions. I don't have children, I don't have pets that need walking or whatever, so it is literally me with my head down, sort of trying to get on with things. But I know it must be really, really difficult if you have got a whole host of other distractions to get that
Yeah.
balance right every day. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, what we're going to be discussing today. Guys,
Mm,
put in the chat box as well, what's the disadvantages of working from home from your perspective? The one that I would add is just not switching off. I find
mm,
that I work a lot more. You know, I'm very passionate about my work, right? Growing this business and everything that I do, which means that I love doing it, but also it means that I'm on my laptop sometimes at 7 in the morning. It's also I'm on my laptop from 7 p.m. till 11 p.m. Sometimes I'm on the sofa watching TV with my wife, but at the same time working. So I think that's the hardest thing for me is there seems to be very little. I have to force myself to switch off. And even when I do that, it's still very easy to then just go and grab your laptop
yeah.
as well. So, Helen, I know you're probably struggling to get onto this. Hopefully, if you restart it, it should work. George says, sorry, also had connectivity issues. Seems to be something happening at the moment with Demio, so hopefully you can get on. These are a few advantages of working from home, but avoiding traffic jams, office gossip, and interruptions from colleagues come to mind. Not
Mm,
switching off, working more hours than normal, Deirdre said. Debbie says, I'm the same as Paul, lack of work-life balance. We've
mm,
got Emma saying loneliness as well. Lisa, you're right, Paul, it's hard to switch off, and so we have to try to become more disciplined about when I work. So
mm,
hopefully, even though we're going to be discussing what you can do to encourage your employees to manage distractions and switch off, hopefully there's going to be some takeaways for you guys as well to be able to, start to manage distractions and switch off. And we're going to be sharing some, 6 tips to help you with that. And I think before we even do that, and one of the points I'm gonna ruin it already for you, but I think it's important to realize that there's no perfect way here. I've
mm,
just spoken about how I'm going to be talking about, this is how you manage distractions, but I was working late last night. I was up early working. I think it's very difficult to make it perfect.
mm.
Um, So we're going to be sharing some tips with you, but just know that we're not striving for perfection here. We're just striving to be, 1-2% better every single day. Sorry, Sophie just said back-to-back meetings with the team not being able to turn to each other for questions throughout the day and
Yeah.
everyone being more collaborative, which is great. It can be impossible to fit time in to even grab a glass of water in between. Yeah, I can relate to that. Longer to communicate with colleagues. Face to face is so much quicker. You can spot cues in facial expressions, body
Yeah.
language. Don't talk over each other. I feel like, I don't know if you guys can relate, but I have far more meetings now than I did have when I was working in an office, because you just book back-to-back calls, as you've said, like back-to-back Zoom calls. Even I always kind of discipline myself to not do more than one webinar a day, because when I do a webinar, I share my personal experience and my story. But last week, it's bad, but I crammed 4 webinars into one afternoon. And these
Oh,
webinars happened at like 2, 3, 4, 5. So it was literally like close one Zoom, open another Zoom, do a webinar, close one Zoom. And that's impossible if you do it in face to face, because I wouldn't be able to get from one place to another. And I think that's the danger of it as well, is we can overbook ourselves. We can do back-to-back calls and we don't have any switch off period
yeah.
as well. Tongue in cheek, having to spend the entire 24 hours with my new husband. It's a test for our marriage. I guess if we can survive this, we can survive anything.
That
Yeah, very good
God,
test.
that is a test. I think you're right. If you can do that, you can do anything. I wonder, because we were talking about like the most, what is it, the most depressing day, the first Monday after Christmas in January, and it's also the day when all divorces get sort of instigated. So I wonder with people being stuck in lockdown, whether those divorce rates will go skyrocketing in January. No, it's sad. Hope not.
7 weeks married today. So you got married during a
Oh
difficult
gosh,
time as
lockdown
well.
on.
So
Yeah.
congratulations. But the key thing is what we're trying to do with this webinar is, remote working doesn't look like it's going anywhere. So what can we do to maximize productivity, general happiness for your employees? And I think as well, even though when all of this is over, remote working will still be embraced by a lot of employers. So
Yeah.
it's still trying to get the most out of our employees when they are working from home, whether it's 1 day a week, 2 days a week,
Yeah.
or whatever. So the first tip, focusing on improving their working environment. I'm sure you all agree when it comes to your own sanity of working from home, you have to have a good environment. So we cannot obviously force employees to work a certain way or within a certain environment, but we can of course suggest to them the importance of it when it comes to improving their working space. So a lot of distractions that happen from home are uncontrollable. So really it's about controlling what we can control. And that's kind of our work environment, how we set up. I think small changes is something that we can encourage them to do as well. They can have a massive impact, like closing the door. This is my lounge. Luckily, we have like another sort of play kind of lounge area in the kitchen with the kids and my wife. And by me shutting the door, it's good for me to just crack on with work, because if that door's open, and it has been all morning because I've wanted to see my boys, they will just walk in and they'll ask questions and everything. So small changes like being able to, if possible, close the door, use a table or desk. All I've got is like my old dining room table, but it sounds silly, but I used to work on like a really small desk. Now I've got a bit more space. I've got a printer and things like that. So it's setting up those kind of small changes, a comfy chair, etc. And also we worked with a client where they encouraged employees to share their workspaces. So some were sharing like really messy photos of like papers everywhere. Some were sharing like, a really nice sort of standing up desk. And in a way, it encouraged that kind of collaboration and that conversation around it. But there was also people taking ideas and inspiration of, oh, maybe I can just make this small change. And then that can dramatically help how I'm working from home as well. So when it comes to that, I think it is just encouraging them to focus on improving their working environment. And I think that's key as well. Zoe, you were just talking about you've got kind of 2 different spaces. So I guess that helps you too.
Yeah, it does. I've got my little office up here that I've got set up, and then I've sort of commandeered part of the kitchen and got myself a new printer and whatnot, and sort of transferred my files out the office into a little cupboard there. So it's not a big space, but I think it's just, and what I've tried to do is get into the discipline of putting everything away at night. So rather than just, because normally I'll leave both laptops on, sort of like permanently, and I'll be switching from one to the other and checking stuff. But really, that's probably not a good habit. So now I've tried to sort of put things away, put them in my little cupboard, and think, right, you know, I'm not, and even if it is like 7 o'clock or whatever, but then say, right, that's it now, that's all away, and I clear it all, because it is just little things, isn't it? And it's almost like a signal that, you know, I'm going to finish now, because as you said, you could easily just go on and on and on, couldn't you, and still be checking emails or whatever at 10 o'clock at night, which day in, day out is really not a good habit to get into, especially when there's no sight of this sort of coming to an end before Christmas. I think, realistically, I think we're in this until the new year now. So I think you've absolutely got to get that balance, or, it could lead to further problems, or, worst case, complete burnout, because you are literally not switching off at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Lisa's just said it helps to have a separate space for work if you can.
Yeah.
I think, you see all these photos on Instagram and LinkedIn of these amazing working from home setups, right? And I'm sure if I just turn my camera around, as I say, all it is just a dining room table and a chair, right? So it's not as glamorous as it is. And it's in a room that I should not be working in here. I wasn't working in here before. And I think if people can find that little space, like whether it's in a separate bedroom or whether it's in somewhere that they can literally just shut the door and that's their workspace, that separates them from the kitchen and everything else, I think that's really, really important too. And again, that working environment is so key for productivity, for sort of managing those distractions. If I sit on a sofa and work, it definitely impacts my productivity in comparison to me sitting here sort of getting some work done. So you can't force them, but I would just encourage them to make those small changes, and how much of an impact that can have on their overall day as well. Zoe, do you want to take number 2?
Yeah, so this is all about sort of understanding, I guess, the importance of routine, and again, one routine is not necessarily going to be fit for purpose for everyone. So I think from an employer perspective, if you can be flexible with that routine, and really, I guess, empower employees to be sensible about that routine, and to have start and finish times, and to really put measures in place to make sure that they stick to that. A massive part of this is trust. I mean, I've heard these horror stories about people or employers suggesting that, like a Google Hangout is permanently on, so they're almost like spying on what people are doing, which I just think is absolutely crazy. But I think if you've not got that element of trust there, these flexibility suggestions are going to fall flat. You've got to have the trust there. You've got to have those check-ins from a supportive perspective, but then trust that your employees will do the right thing. And at the end of the day, if you're having those regular check-ins with them, and from a supportive perspective as well, in theory, things should not be going horribly wrong or deviating down, a completely different route, because they should still be on track. And if you can, I don't know, encourage them to maybe use that reduction in, or the complete removal of commute time. What can they do with that time? Can they use it for a bit of self-care, or a bit of exercise, or just a little bit of fresh air outside? And I think it's giving them the reassurance that you're not checking up on them, and actually it is okay to use that time. I mean, their day might in theory be 9 to 5, but if they want that day to be, I don't know, 8 till 4 or whatever, because they've got commitments in the evening, or they've got childcare issues, then I think it's right that we do communicate that and give them the reassurance that nobody's going to be checking up on them at 5 o'clock if actually they've said, do you know what, I'm going to finish at 4 and it's for these reasons. I think at the end of the day, I don't know, sometimes employers are terrible at doing this, but we should be focusing on the right outputs, not, logging every sort of minute or whatever that's put in during the day. It should be a real sort of output issue, and it only becoming a problem, I guess, if that sort of productivity and those outputs really dip, and then it's a different conversation, isn't it? But yeah. I think that routine, whatever works, has got to be right for those individuals and fit in with their home life. as well, which is so
Yeah.
different at the moment.
Exactly. I think like that's the key in this point is if you have the ability to be flexible,
Mm,
because if you're an organization of whatever 100 people, 1,000 people, if not, more, there's no one employee that's going to be the same, right? Everyone's different.
yeah.
Some people might like I'm personally very productive at 5 a.m. if I can get up, right? That for me is like my power hour. If I can get up at 5, I can get a lot of work done. But it's for me, the morning is where I'm my most productive. Evening, I'm not productive at all. So it's about
Mm,
sort of, people being aware of that and encouraging that sort of flexibility of routine. As you said, it could be they've got to drop their kids to nursery or whatever, or to
mm,
a sort of, parent if they're looking after the kids, and that's being at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. So they might start their day a little bit later. I think it's being that, flexible with them, and,
yeah.
and that will maximize the most that we can get from employees too.
Yeah. And it
Um,
and it
and I've
shifts.
also seen, sorry, I was
Sorry.
just going to say, I've also seen some companies, I don't know what you think about this, sort of switch people's work emails off after a certain period of time. So, like after 5 o'clock, they've switched off their work emails, which I probably wouldn't like personally, because that's just, I would rather be on top of stuff. I wouldn't like it taken
Yeah.
away from me. But
Yeah.
I get the intent, and I think it's good if you can say, look, finish at 5, and trying to sort of hammer that across to them as well.
Yeah, I think it's got to boil down to what works, hasn't it? I agree with you. I wouldn't like that either. But it's back to the trust and empowerment, and actually being trusted to decide, what works best. I mean, I'm not very good. I'm not very good at dealing with like distractions from a noise perspective. So if there was loads going on around me, I would struggle to concentrate. I can't multitask very well, and if I've got like music blaring, in one ear, and I really struggle. And sometimes I might just, take a Sunday afternoon or whatever and catch up on emails or do a bit of work because it's really quiet. I've got no distractions. And I think as long as the culture is that that's not expected. I mean, I've seen some leaders, putting on their emails around, say for example, they do send an email at the weekend or whatever, they've almost like put a bit of narrative around, please, do not feel as if you have to respond to this is just me catching up,
Mm.
or whatever the wording was. And I think I sort of like that sentiment, because I think it works for them, and we don't know what's going on in their personal life, what potential distractions they've got in a normal 9 to 5 environment. So I think it's what works, but making sure that you don't almost like push those practices onto somebody else or expect them from somebody else, because their life is completely different and their
Yeah,
distractions are
I like that.
completely different, and it's not necessarily going to work. But yeah, I think it's showing
Yeah,
that bit,
I
bit
like
of
that. I
bit
mean,
of
I've been,
understanding.
yeah, I mean, I will send people emails on a weekend, and I just do that without expecting a response at the
Mm,
weekend. But I know that sometimes by putting that little bit of frame around it of, I know I've sent you this on a Saturday, but don't feel like you have to respond at the weekend, because I
yeah.
know sometimes that can make people feel like, oh, I need to respond. I've just had this email come
Mm,
through. Equally as well, I've had people say, look, don't don't work at the weekends, and that kind of doesn't sit easy with me as well, because I'm a bit like you. If I've got stuff to catch up on, like a Saturday morning, just for like 2 hours of deep work,
mm,
I can get a lot done because my emails aren't sort of pinging in, and things aren't happening. So I think it's just, everyone's different, and it's about
yeah.
encouraging people to work the way that they want to work as well.
Yeah,
Just going to read
definitely.
out a couple of things. Sophie from the last point said, she was originally working at the dining room table. In August, decided to sell the spare bed, buy a desk for that room instead. It's made such a huge difference to how we live outside of work now
Yeah,
that our dining room is a social space. I love that.
that's good.
Sandra says, I always adopt that policy. Just because I'm working at 9 p.m. doesn't mean I
Yeah,
expect them to do the same. I love that as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Cool, good stuff. Tip number 3, and this is really, really key from what we've seen as well, is offer and reinforce the need for regular breaks. So, of
Mm,
course, if we're working from home, there's this real, and I'm guilty of this, and I'm sure you're the same as well, that I've got this huge to-do list. My mind is telling me and reminding me that I've got this huge to-do list, and the only way that I'm going to do that is by working, by sitting here in front of this laptop. But actually, even this morning, when my mind was telling me that, and I knew that I had to go do a dog walk, right? I was like, I'm not going to go and do the dog walk, but I did. And that hour out with the dog, I came back like fresh, ready to go, and my productivity had kind of like skyrocketed. Whereas if I would have probably just sat behind the desk, I wouldn't have been as productive. So really, when we're looking at this, there's lots of research that has shown that regular breaks, are good for mental health, and it's something that we should definitely encourage. Work from home doesn't mean always work when you're at home. It's working from home in a period of time, and
Mm,
also knowing that it's okay to switch off. Meal breaks, I'm sure some of you are guilty of doing this as well, eating at your desk while you're working,
mm,
or taking your laptop out to the dining room table, carrying on with some work while you're eating. I do that. And it's, again, encouraging those meal breaks. I'm doing it a lot more, and it's just kind of reinforcing yourself to do that. Out of offices, I feel like less people are putting out of offices on because they're working from
yeah,
home. You don't think so? And
yeah.
it's kind of encouraging them to do that. It's like, if you're having
Mm,
an afternoon off or whatever, put that out of office on. Coffee mornings is what a lot of clients that we're working with are offering to their employees. So, no work, we're just going to do a coffee morning or a tea and talk or whatever it is, jump on. And it's kind of like a break, a time for them to sort of, refresh. Half days, casual meetings while out walking. There's loads that we've seen that have really kind of encouraged employees to take that break. Also, as well, we're seeing lots of clients and companies do more during this period to try more initiatives. So cooking classes, like we saw,
mm,
I was working with a client that was doing like a cooking class for their employees via Zoom, yoga
mm,
via Zoom, meditation via Zoom. And it's a really good opportunity for us as companies to test this, because we're not going to be spending a huge amount of
mm.
money. Like doing a cooking class in the office, Zoe would know more than I would, but it's not going to be cheap, right?
Yeah.
But doing that via Zoom is probably going to be a
Mm,
lot more affordable, and you can
yeah.
test and see if people like it or not.
Mm,
And then finally, being behind a screen doesn't mean your employees are productive. So regular breaks, change in state, all of that's important. Sometimes for me, it's just putting on some music, going for a quick walk, or kind of moving around and then coming back to the desk, and that can have
mm,
a kind of massive impact on
yeah.
productivity as well.
And I think for me it's sort of appreciating that everybody is going to be switched on by different things. I mean, we did an engagement survey recently, and we literally had, both ends of the spectrum, in terms of some people saying, yeah, I'd love to try a cookery class over Zoom or whatever it was, and then others saying, no, hate it, hate that sort of stuff. So literally we had quite, polar opposites in some of the things. And I think from an HR perspective, I'm sure everybody's in the same boat at the moment, thinking, crikey, what are we going to do for Christmas? I mean, I've been having conversations with, events companies, thinking, what can we do? Is it worth spending, what could be quite a significant amount of money trying to do a fancy virtual event, when actually they might just like a present and a glass of fizz or whatever over a Google Hangout, and I'm that's what I'm trying to balance at the moment, because I think everybody has got such differing opinions about what they would like to do. It's really hard to please everyone. And I think, sometimes because HR have, accountability, or usually have accountability for, that whole engagement piece and comms piece and everything, but it's a real hard balance to strike. And I know a lot of people have been have been struggling with, Christmas planning and engagement sort of activities and everything. And again, because this is going to go on for probably a long time, it's not a problem that's going to go away quickly. I think, which means that we're going to have to keep on coming up with with new things to try. I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's inevitable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's one of those where I don't think it's going to stop. And I like what
No.
Richard just said. I've had to book lunchtime in my diary to ensure I get the free time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. It's about sort of scheduling out your time, because I used
Yeah.
to do a lot of that myself, working from home, where it sounded really bad, but I would schedule in family time, and I would schedule in sort of lunch, and I
Mm,
would schedule in everything. And
yeah.
my wife, she laughed at that. She was like, "Oh God, are you scheduling me into your diary?"
Got a
But it kind
window.
of it kind of really helped that productivity, because if I didn't do that, naturally I would
Mm,
start booking stuff in, right? And then we unconsciously realize, oh, actually we haven't, had lunch with our
yeah.
spouse, or we haven't had lunch with our kids for the last couple of weeks. So I think that's a really important point, Richard. Like, don't be afraid to kind of schedule in personal time into your
Yeah.
diary. So the time that you're going to do some exercise, the time that you're going to have a break,
Mm,
it could be scheduling in half an hour in your day where you go and do I don't know, whatever it is that's kind of your coping strategy or something
Yeah.
that's proactively managing your mental health. I feel like if we don't schedule it in, we just forget to do it, right? Because it's not
Yeah.
natural for us to do it.
Yeah, we do though, don't we? If you've not got anybody else at home, my partner will come in at like 4 o'clock or whatever because he works in an office outside. Sounds like he's in the garden. Yeah, we converted the garage, but he's got the big fancy office. But yeah, he'll come in at 4 and say, "You've not eaten today," and and sometimes you get so engrossed, don't you, in doing things. It's not a good,
Yeah,
not a good habit to get into, definitely.
definitely got to force it. Number 4.
So connection. So we touched on this earlier, didn't we? And this is a real biggie for me. I just think it can definitely lead to feelings of isolation. That in itself has proven to have an impact on productivity. I think as human beings, most of us crave that sort of interaction, don't they? I mean, yes, some people might be more reserved or less sociable, but in general, we crave that sort of interaction, and we like to have conversations with people. We like to have catch ups and exchange ideas and find out what's going on and just catch up on news. So without that sort of either office or working environment that you're normally in, it can really be missed sort of on a day-to-day basis. So I think from an employer perspective, you probably can't over communicate unless you're ending up communicating absolute nonsense. But I think the more interaction you can try and build in on a weekly basis, the better. But again, it's what works. I mean, I know some companies have been putting in like little breakfast hangouts and just saying, whilst you're having your cup of tea at 8:30 in the morning or whatever, just say hi to your colleagues. We'll be on there if you want to have a chat. But again, it's not for everyone. So I think it's about having that variety that you can have, almost like social check-ins, but make sure that managers are having those work check-ins as well. So you're not going to have that sort of office or corridor conversation because you're not there. So it is important that managers literally pick up the phone or book in a video call just to see how people are doing. And and as long as it comes from the position of how are you and how are you getting on and can I help you with anything, and from a work perspective, are there any blockers to what you're trying to achieve? If it's coming from a good place and it's not coming from I'm checking up on you and what time did you log on this morning or whatever, which unfortunately can sometimes be the case. But if it is genuinely from a supportive place, then I think that has huge positive impacts. So I think we said before, didn't we, having that connection time, be it one-to-one, be it a bit of a team coffee session or, whatever it might be. I think there's no right or wrong here. It's just whatever works for your organization. Clearly, if you have got a big work environment or a big office or whatever it might be, if people are still popping in and you can do that safely. I think unfortunately where we are at the moment, we are in naughty tier 3, so we're all completely locked down and not going back into the office anytime soon. So we are stuck at home whether we like it or not, really. But I think those that are in the lower tiers, if they are still getting into the office and being able to do that in a safe way, then some of that physical interaction can be a real positive, and just stops hopefully people from feeling completely isolated. Or because I guess when you think about it, I was trying to put myself into the shoes of people that live on their own but are still trying to communicate and still trying to hold down a full-time job, but they're completely on their own and they're literally just sat there all day in front of a screen, got no other family at home, not got their colleagues to even speak to. So if somebody's normal interaction is only their colleagues, you're taking that away, and all of a sudden you've only got it via phone or video. That's a massive change to what they're normally dealing with, and it must be very, very lonely.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to reach out to those individuals, particularly if they are living on their own, because that's not a good place to be in if you are feeling really, really isolated. And now that there's no sight, no end in sight before Christmas, people are already thinking, do you know what? Am I going to be on my own for Christmas? Am I going to be, and all really sort of unsettling feelings like that will come to the fore, won't they? Because as soon as people start talking about Christmas, it's that in itself can be a lonely time anyway. And if you add into the mix that actually some people who are living on their own are now not going to be able to mix, or I don't know, maybe they can do if it's within the same bubble, but it's almost like, for me, linked to not having very much to look forward to. I think normally for me personally, you know, I look forward to booking holidays and things like that, and things like Christmas and stuff you naturally look forward to, don't they? But at the moment, it feels as though all the good stuff's gone out the window. You know, you can't book a holiday, or probably shouldn't be booking a holiday, and Christmas is going to, you know, not be the same. And all of that adds to those feelings of just a bit, you know, feeling a bit down, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Feeling a bit, having that low mood about what's potentially in front of us, which isn't great. So, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's the thing that we're seeing again, and you know, lots of sort of research backs this up, that isolation, feelings of loneliness have a sort of detrimental impact on productivity and mental health. And you know, the importance of community and connections is really, really key. You know, so if you're looking at community, it's typically what kind of community do we have at home? What's our family circle like? What's our friend circle like? But we all know a key community is our work, you know, the people that we surround ourselves with. So that's just been taken away from a lot of people. And I think it comes back to that point of one-on-ones. You know, if we're in an office, I might have a casual chat with George, you know, who's sitting opposite me, and we might just have a casual chat, sort of a connection. But from home, you know, that's me emailing George saying, hey, have you got 20 minutes to do a Zoom, right? And there's that doesn't happen as often, because, you know, we're not having that connection. So it's almost like we're forcing, you know, one-on-ones to happen, of like, hey, do you just want a coffee? You know, especially I think this is key for line managers, you know, to be able to do that, reaching out to their team and asking them if they just fancy a coffee. I think it's important to do that. George says it's a pity that many managers don't respect one's personal time, and even less so now that we're working from home. There's more micromanagement with constant monitoring during the day and demand after hours. Yeah, I think like Zoe said, it's trust is the key to all of this. You know, we have to trust that, you know, our team are working to their best ability, encourage them through strategies like this. But, you know, if we lack trust and we try and micromanage it, it's actually could have an adverse impact on productivity as well.
Yeah, definitely.
The fifth one, because I'm conscious of the time, distractions will happen. It's going to happen, right? Working from home will always come with distractions, just like working in an office will as well. You know, if I'm working in an office, someone could come, start talking to me, and next thing I know, it's kind of been an hour and I haven't done much work. So don't strive for perfection. You know, it's going to happen. Distractions will happen during this time. Expectations, we've spoken about this a lot in other webinars. Manage your own expectations from working from home. Like if you've had a bad day, it hasn't been very productive, distractions have happened, don't beat yourself up for that. Like you can make up for it tomorrow or next week or whatever. I know sometimes the biggest battle that I have is my own expectations of how much work I should be doing every single day. But when you're looking at it, you know, as long as you're doing your best, there's no real perfect day. And managing expectations of employees, I'm sure if they don't know the expectations that you have of them, they are almost beating themselves up, or they're getting frustrated when their days are filled with distractions and they feel like they should be delivering more. But sometimes it is just that check-in to say, hey, you're doing a really good job, you know, just continue up. We know productivity is going to be sort of impacted during this time, but what you're doing is great. And that can be huge for them to hear that kind of word. And then focus on the time and effort they're applying while working, rather than kind of so this is kind of like quality over quantity, right? So it's like someone might not work from 8 to 8 like other employees do, but they might be very good at doing deep work from like 10 to 12, and they can get a lot done in that 2-hour period. And I think it's just being aware of that as well. You know, if they're being distracted and they've got to do other things, they've got kids at home, they've got to make sure, you know, everything's going swimmingly, you know, with family and everything, they can still get work done. Just because they're not sitting here at a desk does not mean that they aren't productive. So I think it's kind of potentially offering some sort of solutions and strategies for that. The Pomodoro technique, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, Zoe. That's a good one.
No.
Pomodoro technique. There's also another one that I heard today on my walk, which I thought was really good. I can't remember the name of it, but it was, if you have your to-do list, create like a box of 4 squares, and
Mm.
then you have biggest impact and biggest priority,
Oh
and then
yeah.
lowest impact, lowest priority.
Yeah.
And I thought it's a really key thing. What makes the biggest impact in your day? Like, what's that one
Mm.
task that's going to make a big impact on your day, the business, whatever? And then what's the highest priority? So when does that need to be done? The
Mm.
other ones, they can wait, and then they get moved up to the highest priority, or urgently need to be done. And I think that's a good way of doing it. 'Cause sometimes if we have a long to-do list, we don't know where to start. It gets a bit
Yeah.
bombarded. We don't, and it can be overwhelming as well.
Mm.
So I think it is accepting that distractions will definitely happen as well during this time. Zoe, do you want to go to number 6?
Yeah, and we probably touched on this, but everybody is different, aren't they? And we've, we said before, didn't we, about we're all in the same storm, but we're definitely not in the same boat. I love that quote because it's just so incredibly true. And every employee will have a different scenario, situation. Literally, yes, you'll have some similarities. If people have got big families and kids there or whatever, but everybody's situation will be different, and they'll all have different priorities, different sort of stresses and strains and different responsibilities, and you're not going to have a one size fits all. And I think it is really important to, whilst you're having those check-ins, that you really listen to what it is that they're saying. What is it that they're struggling with? Do they need any additional support? Do they need more flexibility from the company? Do they have everything that they need? Are they able to work effectively from home, or is there anything the company that could do in support of making that an even better experience? Because I think we've all sort of assumed, haven't we, that people will just log on at home and it'll all be great and the internet will be fine, and and that might not be the case whatsoever. And when the schools were closed and the kids were trying to be homeschooled and stuff, that in itself must have been a nightmare, just as one example. But you add into the mix lots of other things. You might be caring for an elderly relative, or you might have sort of a friend that's really sick that you're helping out, or there's lots and lots of reasons why that sort of normal 9 to 5 working day may not work for you. And I think it is important that employees realize that and act on it, and don't just sort of think, well, yeah, you've told me about it, but I'm going to almost like sweep it under the carpet now. It's about taking real action on it. And I think going easy on yourself, and not sort of beating yourself up, and realizing that you're doing a good job, and you're doing the best you can in trying to help other people. It has to come to the forefront, doesn't it? Because I think as HR professionals, we are so used to just constantly trying to help other people and fix things and make things right, and you're a shoulder to cry on, and and these problems that we've all faced over the last 6 months, they've been more, I would imagine, than anybody has ever faced in the whole of their HR career. And I think, as a profession, we've absolutely stepped up to the plate. But I think that there also needs to be a realization that it's physically draining, and we should give ourselves a break, and that we're doing a good job, and all we can do is our best. All we can do is listen, try and act on it, try and support. We haven't got a magic wand, and it's not going to all be fixed overnight, is it? But it's about chipping away and taking positive steps, and really making sure that those employees know that they're being listened to, and they're not being ignored. But you need that support as well from line managers, don't you? As an HR person, you can't fix everything independently. You need managerial and director, CEO, however you've got your structure in place. You need that leadership support to get you through that, because you can't fix it all on your own. Yeah, Sandra, it has been relentless, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I've got some very, very worn out friends at the moment who, it's literally been the worst time of their 20-year plus career. It's been absolutely like nothing we've ever seen. It has been relentless, and
Mm,
it's going to be this way, I think, for a period of time. Even with even with furlough ending this week, that in itself will bring about more issues, more restructures. Unfortunately, probably more redundancies. So I think it's going to be this way for for some time to come, which means it's
yeah.
really important that you do look after yourself as well in all of this. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I've been echoing to clients as well, in terms of typically we're dealing with the HR professional within the business,
Mm,
and it baffles me, right? And I'm going to be completely honest here. It baffles me still how mental health is tasked to just an individual
mm.
who also does a huge amount of work as well, right?
Yeah.
To say to someone, hey, can you improve mental health in the workplace? Can you help all 500 employees or whatever with their mental health, as well as doing everything else that you do? It's like, it's such a huge task to be able
Mm,
to put that on someone's plate. And I feel like, as you said, Zoe, what I've come to realize is, HR professionals are really caring people and they want to do the best for others. And it's easy for all of us to naturally look at the people that are struggling, rather than
mm,
everything that we've done as a business to encourage others to talk or to get help or whatever it is, to manage distractions and look at the positives on it. The same with our app. Our app is probably never going to get 100% sign up rate in a company. Like, I would lie if I were to say that. But at the same time, if we can get 20%, 30%, 40%, whatever, that's still a huge portion of your
mm,
workplace feeling supported, finding out how they can support their own mental health, finding out how they can champion it within the business and encourage it too. So I think it's, like you say, going easy on yourself. You can only do so much during this time. And,
mm.
there's a natural pressure that we put on ourselves to fix everything. But really, we need to focus on the kind of positives that we're doing already.
Yeah.
And as Zoe said, during this difficult time, focus on you as well. Trying to support employees manage distractions is one thing, but supporting yourself managing your own
Yeah.
distractions and your own mental health is important as well.
Yeah. I'll throw this in now because I've found this really supportive. Are you guys members of Liz Henson's HR Ninja group by any chance? Because if you're not, I'd strongly advise you to have a look at that on Facebook if you're on it, because it's turned into such a supportive group over the last few months, and it's been a real, great source of information. And they've now sort of got a document library set up. I think it's really great. So if you're not a member of it, have a little look, because in terms of support, Debbie, I don't know whether there is. I'm not very techy. Paul might know, but
Yeah,
I
Debbie, if you send me an email, I can send you a direct link to it.
because I literally searched for it on Facebook. I literally just put into the search engine HR Ninjas, and it comes up with the little ninja icon. And then I literally just said join group. But yeah, if Paul has got a link, but it's a really great supportive group where you can just ask questions, share documentation, and literally people are posting on a daily basis. And I think it's from
Yeah.
the comments that I'm getting, it's really helping. So yeah, check it out.
It's really good to get that community element, like you say. At the same time, when you're trying to support other people, it's important to support yourselves and surround yourself with that community. And I know Liz is doing an amazing job with that,
Yeah.
and it's a great community to be a part of as well. Also, guys, I'm cautious of time, but if you do want to find out a little bit more about how we can help you, one of our biggest sort of aims as a business is to really support HR professionals when it comes to reducing the time and resources they're spending, and really being those mental health experts to help you when it comes to offering accessible support for your employees, but at the same time helping you understand what they want when it comes to mental health as well. So if you want to find out a little bit more about that, it's a mobile application that we brand to your own business. We help you onboard your staff onto it. It allows your employees to then manage and track their own mental health on their own personal devices. And at the same time, we're always adding more and more content and more suggestions, keeping them supported. But at the same time, we're also feeding back those analytics to you to let them know and let you know how they need some extra support too. We're doing 3 months free at the moment. If you want to sign up, it's everymindatwork.com/inquire. So just on behalf of me, thank you guys for taking the time out to join. Zoe, any last parting words?
No, I don't think so. Just look after yourself, guys, because yeah, it's tough out there at the minute, and yeah, check out the Ninja group, because just for that little bit of extra support, and yeah, we'll hopefully be working a bit closer with Liz going forward as well. So you know, we're trying to tackle and support from both angles. So yeah, but look after yourself, guys, and thanks for joining in, and we'll hopefully see you again next time in November.
Yeah, no worries at all. And guys, just quickly, one more reminder, we're doing this every last Wednesday of the month. So every last Wednesday of the month at 1 p.m. If you want to share the link, everymindatwork.com/live training, feel free to do so. Invite other people on if you want. Again, we're trying to sort of, provide that community and support element as well. No worries, Debbie. No worries, Emma, Sandra, Lisa. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you all very, very soon. All right,
Thanks,
guys. Speak soon.
guys.
Thanks,
Take
Zoe.
care. Bye.